my first question is to get a sense of individual leadership styles basis your lived experiences. It's a common question to all. We'll start from Ganesh. So what leadership tool provides you the most clarity during chaos, and how did this tool evolve over a period of time?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. So I think I follow a very conventional approach to the leadership. What I do is come down and activate what I call it as PRA. Just pause, reflect, and then act, right? And it's a bit of a regression of the wisdom what you have acquired over a period of time, and that works. Thank you.
Thank you. Neeti, if I may ask you the same question.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I think in today's day and age, Navneet, we have no dearth of data with us. I think there's enough of forecasts, dashboards, analytics that all leaders have for decision making. I think hearing stakeholders is very, very important for leaders. What keeps, CXOs up in the night is a question that keeps coming into our minds all the time. And that's something from a leadership perspective is very critical for us to understand and listen to the noise of the industry.
Speaking about staying awake at night, something that kept me awake in the recent past was Praveen's team RCB, which won IPL for the second time. So congrats, Praveen, on that. And over to you for the response to the same question.
Thanks, Nav. First, thanks for inviting me. Lovely to be here. As I think about it, volatility is pretty much the operating environment of the world these days. It's VUCA, or now I realize you use Bani, but whichever way you look at it, that's real. As that happens, one of the things I think about is really seriously look at what has changed, what has not changed, and what are the couple of things we need to do to solve for change. And therefore, over a period of time, and it's been this now for the last 15 years, you heard it consistently. The way I look at it is I'm always walking and talking to our consumers and customers, and therefore knowing what the context is as they operate and as they work. Then be agile, adaptable, understand what they are talking about and see how you can moderate it for yourself. Simplify things. I think people mostly complicate things. So simplify things and get it down to, and then decide on a set of priorities which you want, 2 or 3 of them. Anything more than that is noise, because you can't solve for everything. So I'd say fewer, bigger, better. That's really how I would look at, and that's my work over a period of time to simplify in this complex world.
Thanks, and simplifying complexity is very complex, just like common sense is not so common. Shailendra, your take on the question.
Yeah, so good afternoon, and thank you, Navneet, and in the group for inviting me. Happy to be with this illustrious panel. Could not disagree with anything that was said before, but just to add one additional flavor. To my mind, chaos is always the short term raising its hand and saying that I am more important than the long term. So how do you drown out the noise and also keep an eye on the North Star all the time? Because that's the compass which should guide the direction of whatever you are doing. So yeah, it's important to listen, it's important to take the context in, but never lose sight of the North Star is my mantra.
Thanks. Now we'll move on to the second round of questions. I'll have individual questions to each of you. And the focus of this round, if I may call it so, is to identify core values during chaos and the choices leaders have to make between data-led decision making and intuition. So Ganesh, to begin with, building on the first round, in a world of geopolitical and tech disruptions, what are the 2 or 3 non-negotiable pillars of your leadership blueprint that never change?
So if I look at the technology, it is evolving and it is an enabler to run the core of the business where we belong to, right? And it will take some more time to leave everything to the technology and we sit back and do something else. So under that circumstance, one of the key pillars is people at the core, right? That's not going to change. And people at the core, and you need to purpose it, and then look at value-driven, prioritized approach to whatever you do, whatever business or things which you belong to. But more importantly, you don't have to respond to everything which is happening around. Most of it is a noise. And whatever the noise you have heard on technology 5 years back, almost 95% of that is not relevant today, right? And they call it as POCs, whatever you call it, and it doesn't matter. So we need to be at it with the agenda of prioritization. People at the core, don't respond and react to everything around you. That's the way I take it.
Thank you. Now, Shailendra, I'll come to you. As you lead through volatility, how do you balance between surviving the current quarter and in some cases the current week or the current month while building a foundation that will stand for a couple of decades? How does a leader balance it and how do you approach it?
Yeah. So to my mind, it ends up being obviously you need to survive the battle to win the war, right? You can't be so oblivious to the short term that you only focus on the long term and don't on your salary for the day. But it ends up being a resource allocation question to my mind, right? And obviously any resource that you allocate has to have some ROI. So to my mind, it's always a constant struggle between what is the short-term ROI and the long-term ROI of the limited resources that you would have. But being constantly at it in terms of looking at a revised context, you may have started with a 3-year plan which doesn't seem relevant anymore, or even a 1-year plan keeps going through changes every quarter. So how are you taking those resourcing decisions fast enough, agile enough, to his point earlier? And to Ganeshan's point, making that your decision and not putting it on the team, that I found found to be a very critical aspect. That if you are asking the team to deliver on long-term objectives, but you've taken a short-term call, then ensure that as a leader you are owning up to that stance.
Thank you. We'll come back to team dynamics later. Niti, moving on to you, when you're drafting a new strategic response to a crisis, how do you distinguish between a temporary vibration in the market and a fundamental fault line that requires you to revisit and redraw the entire blueprint?
Sure. So I think the voice of the customer says a lot of things to us, right? I'll give you a classic example. When the e-commerce industry came up, most retailers kind of sat back and said, oh, this is temporary. Nothing's going to change our world, right? Thereby missing signals, early signals, and huge market shares, right? Today, that industry has disrupted the way we live and eat every single minute. Right? Likewise, AI. AI is a permanent disruptor for sure. It's going to change the way the world of work works. It would also mean that we are all on the drawing board right now, and I'm sure most CXOs are on the drawing board right now, thinking about their org structures, the talent map, the skill sets that are required. I think that's a permanent change. So understanding how your customer behaves during the disruption, and I liked what he mentioned saying, chaos, and chaos is always temporary. At some point it's going to rationalize and stabilize. So how do we cut the noise from actually the signal? I think that's really very critical for all leaders. It comes with experience. It comes by making mistakes ourselves. It's not, I don't think there's a textbook that says this is the right way, especially in a disruptive world that we are living in right now when things are changing so rapidly.
Speaking about chaos, while we think chaos is temporary, I think we have gotten used to permanent chaos since the time of COVID, something or the other is happening. You also touched upon AI.
So chaos is the new normal.
Chaos is the new
Stay
normal.
with that, it works.
So Praveen, speaking about AI, when does AI's algorithmic clarity become dangerous? And where must a CEO's human intuition overrule what data suggests?
Look, I think AI is powerful. It connects the dots which we sometimes miss, shows us patterns which obviously unlocks new value. So let's not run away from that. But as I always think about it, what technology does, it scales intelligence. What leadership does, it scales judgment. I think you've got to embrace the intelligence. You've got to embrace the understanding, the patterns we would have missed humanly, which AI fills in. but you are there to provide for that judgment and therefore build on that. And that's how I would say it. You got to, embrace technology, but that can't be the end, the game. It has to be your judgment layered on it.
Well put, thanks. Um, we'll move on to the next round of questions. And in this round, we'll focus on delegation, something you spoke about, and also the need to pivot to a plan B or a plan C or a plan D. I'll start with you, Shailendra. How do you ensure your strategic clarity at the top doesn't become a confusion for the front lines? And what's your personal technique for radical simplification?
Yeah, so maybe I'll answer it in two parts. One which I hinted earlier, that no long-range planning works anymore. You can have a North Star, but you constantly need to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C at times. And you should be prepared to trigger the response accordingly depending on the context. Given this discussion around noise and chaos, there are many signals which come as either problem or opportunity. And it's humanly impossible for any leader to decide what is the right thing to do. What I found useful is to create enough pilots so that no opportunity gets ignored or no problem gets magnified too much beyond what it deserves. So create enough pilots, create small teams who can look at either the problem to be solved or the opportunity to be magnified, and have that fail-fast thing, which we've all learned from startups. If it was noise, then don't wait for 5 years to figure out that it was noise. Kill it in the next 3 odd months. On this thing about clarity, reaching the front line, you have to do the hard yards. It is about over-communication. You would be surprised at the Chinese whispers or the dissipation between what you said in one meeting and how it got interpreted down the line. So the more you are in the trenches at the time of chaos, the more you are communicating and explaining why. I think a lot of the human need is they understand that there is some change in decision making, but the why is very, very important to articulate.
So lead with clarity, but be visible in leadership, right? So Ganeshan, and we have seen this often, that middle management often buckles under the pressure of executing CEO vision, right or wrong. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. How does your leadership architecture support middle management so that they don't become a single point of failure in execution?
So I think a bit of a reflection of the past, maybe 20 years back, whether it's manufacturing or getting some projects done, it was a linear planning of an objective, right? A production of X number of cars to be produced in the shop. So it's about putting the resources and the actions right from the leadership up to the shop floor in one rhythmic way. If they don't do it, they have an opportunity to course correct, but nothing is going to go wrong terribly. But in the modern era, business plan is done by the organizations, and very next month, West Asia crisis happens. And then you are done with that, another one happens. Otherwise, an internal polarization, something happens. So it's a combination of leadership material, of communicating the intent of what needs to be done, along with seamlessly how the change has to be built into the way they are going to do the activity, right? So irrespective of whether it is strategy at the top or tactical in the middle or operational on the ground, I think the leaders, the biggest challenge or the opportunity is in simplify and define ultimate outcome of what is to be done. In a lighter sense, people say there is a vegetable there, rice over here, oil over there, but the food has to be served in the plate, right? That's an ultimate outcome. But people get distorted in the middle saying it's all there, but it'll get done. So I think that's going to be an ever-evolving thing. Technology is not going to help. It's a wisdom and the fabric which has to be created between the top and the middle. And then together, how they take it to the ground. That's the way I look at it.
So Praveen, I'll come to plan B, plan C around that area, but could you share a moment from last year or the recent past where you have to tear up your blueprint mid-construction? And how did you communicate that shift without causing panic internally?
Look, I think technology is a great example, and all of us have done a whole lot of plan A, plan B, plan C when AI does. I used to run a media business some time back, and I'm going to talk that example, more than A couple of years back, we ran a whole lot of models, and when our digital news business was getting search traffic, and search traffic was overwhelmingly growing, we ran a few models, what will happen post-AI. And then we had our own regression analysis and understanding as to exactly where it will land and how it will work, and therefore what changes we need to do. We realized as we went through the journey, and that was 2 years back, first 1 year, nothing happened, and we thought all our models were wrong. And said, wow, nothing's really going to change really. Growth's coming, we're seeing traffic come back, business was good as usual. And therefore, we doubled down and invested back. 6 months later, things changed. I left the organization, but it dramatically changed because somewhere Google integrated Gemini into search, and that killed search traffic in 2 updates. In 2 updates, it killed it. So that it was not only plan B and plan C, there were many plans done. So I just believe as you go through this process, don't get married to your plans. Get married to the reality, the context, and be agile and adaptable. And therefore, if you walk that path and constantly assume change is inevitable, it's around the corner, you got to adapt to it. And you get the best out of it, you will come out winning. So that's the way I would say, look at it.
Thanks, and Praveen's a good friend from the industry I work with. Praveen ran HT Media for close to 7 years before he shifted to, he moved on to Diageo. Neeti, again in the same space, in an era of 3-month sprints, how do you build a modular leadership framework that is solid, but it's easily retrofitted for disruption?
I guess easier said than done. But there are 2 things that I firmly believe in. I think the sayings, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And kill your darlings. I think he alluded to it in some way, right? As leaders, we just get so emotional about stuff that we are building and, nurturing it and growing that we stop looking beyond what next, right? Disruptions are going to happen. In fact, now they're happening more often. If we are able to pivot quickly, if we are able to be agile as an organization, as a team, I think that's the first step for any change or adapting to any change. Again, like I said, easier said than done. It's not easy to get your team to follow every change that you're looking at. For them, the question is, why me? Why is it going to impact me? Why not somebody else? Why should I learn? Why should I do something else? But I think as leaders, we have to keep looking at what next. How do we do it? And how soon can we actually adapt and make changes? So agility, adaptability, just being fit enough from an org perspective to keep making those changes on the go. Because if, and we've seen a lot of, layoff news recently, it was purely, and they're saying, oh, I've, cut flab. Why did organizations have flab in the first place? I think we have to start thinking about it now rather than when we are actually hitting a roadblock.
Isn't it exactly like us when we age?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
We all add flab as we go
Correct.
on. We have to
Classic
constantly
example.
skill and retool.
True.
Yes.
We'll move on to the next round, and this is a common question to all of you, but we will go in reverse order, starting with Shailendra. The area I want to focus on in this round is for each of you to set a context around the industries you represent and your leadership response to chaos within that industry context. The question is, what is a recent chaotic situation where you had to make a tough, clarity-driven decision, and what did you learn from it?
So given that we are also responsible for some part of the AI technology disruption, I'll give examples closer to our business. But I'll also put in the context of not just technology disruption, but some of the other things that we are seeing, right? Geopolitical, other kind of disruptions which are also around us. So imagine us we are a global company supplying to 180 markets. And we are rated quite well. We are in the top 10 in terms of Gartner supply chain across industries. Now what happens if tariffs change on a daily basis? Which factory do you supply from? We have 36 factories, right? So which factory do you double down on capacity and which factory do you taper down? It's almost like a quarterly decision for us. But yeah, the organization has adapted. Not my decision, but I'm just giving an example on how agile and flexible you have to be when tariffs change by 30-40% and can upset the entire economics of the shipment. The second, many of you would have heard that the core category for us, laptops, the pricing is going up by 100%. It's going up by 100% because all the memory supply has gone to AI factories. So there's nothing left for the cheaper memory of 16 GB, 8 GB. There's nothing left for phones and laptops. So what decision do you take, right? Especially in a country like India, there is a first-time buyer market. People want affordable technology so that the first-time buyer can come into the category adoption. But when you are short, you'll obviously prioritize supply towards where you can make a little more money. So tough decision, but yeah, you prioritize commercial over consumer. In a sense, you're prioritizing short-term over long-term, but there's no perfect solve for this. This is how we are responding to some of our category issues.
Thanks for being so candid. Praveen?
Well, I presently lead an organization where, we make all your life's moments more excitable and enjoyable. I hope all of you are our consumers, and some of you who aren't, my constant endeavor is to find a way to, get you into our fold. And this is to you, Ganeshan, in specific, absolutely. So, as we go through this, the question you ask is, are consumers changing? Are their behaviors changing? Are they drinking differently? Are they moderating? Do they want something which they've grown up in their childhood with? Or do they want flavorful and more relevant experiences? They want local crafted provenance, or do they want global? It's a constant need, okay? And I think, as I've said, and as everybody around the panel said, change is the reality. It's the new normal, and we shouldn't get hassled about it. I don't think we can solve for all of those occasions consumers are looking for. We got to be choiceful about what we say yes to and what we say no to, because most of us are not good in saying no. Very few are, and I appreciate you, but we'll find a way to get you there. So most of you aren't. Sorry? No, simple judgment there. So most of us aren't good at saying no, and I think that's the single biggest challenge. Ability to say what we will not get into and what we will, and therefore ability to making right choices. It obviously, as he rightly said, AI will give us patterns and therefore give us insights. But I think, layering it with your judgment to say which are the ones you want to go after and therefore solve for is really is how I would look at it, as how we have ensured that we work through it, and therefore how we have ensured that we continue to be growing sustainably.
Thanks. Niti, I'll request you to go after Ganeshan. So, Ganeshan.
So I think slightly, since I come from infrastructure, I'll give two examples. During the COVID, country was under lockdown from 23rd of March. And then suddenly a realization that we need to build hospitals, right? And we need to get oxygen generators. And L&T was one of the companies which responded to that by holding more than 120,000 of the skilled workforce at different places in the country, feeding them and keeping them safe and keeping a doctor to keep their health in good shape, allowing them to communicate with the family. And we built hundreds and hundreds of hospitals, temporary ones to a bigger one with full-fledged facilities, utilities, and then went about it. The reflection is, if there is a structure and capacity, you can respond to any situation. That is a situation which nobody would have expected, right? That's in the context of COVID. Fast forward, we have been facing this irritation of Red Sea over the last 3-4 years. Ukraine, Russia, whatever way you look at it, and now Strait of Hormuz. Entire country is disturbed. We cannot, and L&T is across the world. 50% of our projects are in Middle East and eastern part of Africa, and 50% in India. The supply chain is right from North America, Europe, India, and China, and the Southeast Asian countries. But what we are doing right now to respond to this is that you can traditionally do plan A, plan B, have some alternate supply chains and things like that. That is where we have started putting up this AI algorithms of knitting multiple variables right from logistics, suppliers, the raw material sources, and the geopolitical things which are happening as a news into and packaged algorithms to see how much of uncertainty you can get some prescription out of the past happenings. You know, the crude shock happened in 1990s, it's not new, right? And probably 70 to 80% of instinctive calls are getting into a structured clinical decisions or prescriptions coming out of the AI. If we have got a past data to put it up in a structured way and leave it to the judgments of the leaders to take the final decision on how to go about it. Having said this is going to be a new normal, it's not something which we have seen 15, 20 years back. So every week expect some shock. So the new business model has to be permanently structured for that. I think that's an opportunity as well. And where technology, leadership, a new wave of leadership development is required. Going to IIMs and studying the classical management theories are going to be challenged. I think that's the focus, and we are responding and we are seeing some tractions around that. Having said that, it is not all done. We all have to work towards better days.
Thank you. Neeti?
Yeah. So, you know, we are a people solutions company. Any upswing and downswing in economy, you know, impacts us directly. And I'll give an example. He mentioned COVID and, you know, you had a downturn. The business that I was focusing on was pure technology staffing. And during COVID, everybody wanted to hire tech workforce. So we had a huge, you know, wind behind our back, said, you know, hey, fine, everything had a good pat on our back. 2 years later, the same downswing happened and we got hit very badly. And that was a big wake-up call for all of us, saying, what are we doing? Why are we becoming an index to the market? What is it that we do to alienate ourselves from what's happening just outside? And that is where we started building our capabilities and capacities to doing beyond just technology staffing. And today, as we speak, actually last financial year when we closed, about 35% of our hires were specialized skills in engineering, product design, chartered accountants, financial, you know, workforce, F&A force. So yes, we started building capability and capacity and also upgrading our own skill sets, our recruiter hiring engines, our skill sets. So last year we hired about 1,500 AI and AI adjacent skilled workforce. So this is the investment that we made for 24 months actually is paying results right now. But yes, it was a rude awakening shock for us in 2023.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for your responses. We'll move on to the next round, and here I really want us to focus on how do we manage the here and now and plan for the then and there. That's a struggle in terms of investment, time, bandwidth, and so on. So I'll start with you, Ganeshan. When supply chain shocks, geopolitical tensions, and volatility hit your desk at 8 a.m., what is the very first metric you look at to find clarity? Or is there a metric at all?
I think that's common to the country as well as to the business, what we run, is the energy supply chain. You know, today in India, if you want to build a building, you need steel and concrete and cement, right? You need a lot of fuel to prepare steel. You need a lot of fuel to prepare cement. Whatever polyester cloth, what we wear, it's a downstream petrochemical product. Logistics of vegetable supply to a material supply to an equipment supply or hospital supply, it's all trucks moving consignments across. So it is a common thread across the globe today that energy disturbance is one of the most important things we need to worry about it. The second aspect is, if I get up in the morning and hear a shock, what's my global backlog? Either with my projects or backlog of things which have to come in for me to convert that as a value-added product. So everybody talks about China plus one, Atmanirbhar, Viksit Bharat. So I think this is again a new normal. Everybody is concerned about supply chain, more assurance, and looking inward and building their capacity. So this is what comes to my mind immediately.
Shailendra will move a little bit away from processes and look at the intersection of process and people. And this is a question a lot of young colleagues keep asking all of us in our offices if we are willing to entertain them. Moving beyond the when and where of work, how do you measure the productivity today? How do you measure true productivity today beyond hours logged or number of days in office?
Yeah, interestingly, I was interviewing someone for an important role. I got into some debate on how to manage Gen Z and now Gen Alpha. The world is obviously very different. The expectations are very different. They do expect a lot more dialogue. They are surely not hierarchical that if the boss has said, they'll just comply. So while you said it's not a process question, I think this thing about having a dialogue more often. So in fact, we moved our company. We used to have an annual appraisal. We learned from a startup CEO, no, annual appraisal is not enough. You need to have a quarterly performance measurement mechanism. So we created something which is formal. It is not. It is a continuous performance feedback is what we call it. A CPF form which is filled in, documented, and there's a dialogue. And people, most of our employees are young and in technology. They appreciate that there's constant feedbacking on whether they are going in the right direction or not. And to your question on how do you measure productivity, I think it's a lot beyond numbers and the immediate task. What I particularly look at is the sequential progress. Are they headed in the right direction? Okay, the person may have missed his or her numbers, but is there sequential progress? Is there long-term capacity building that the individual is delivering? And as long as you have an honest dialogue around it, I think people appreciate that.
Thank you. Praveen, there are a lot of students in the room, people who will, bright young kids, some of them are running a panel later today. And
Wants to ask a question.
sir, I'll come to questions later. Some of them will enter the corporate world very soon. So the younger generations are entering a corporate world that feels inherently chaotic and disconnected. What is the one core anchor your company relies on to build culture, especially when people rarely sit in the same room?
Well, lovely to see a lot of young people. I'm searching for them, but
The
but
students
I thought most
put
of
up
us
their
are
hands.
young, but
Yeah.
I hate people being distinguished by age. It's young is in the mind, But I just say culture is what people do when leadership is not in the room. Culture is what we do as citizens when we are not policed. Okay. And that is culture. Okay. Now, to make that work on a sustainable, ongoing basis, it's about, as I see it, is what's the meaning of what everyone does? What does that individual contribute to the whole? And they constantly need to see that. In some functions you can, in some jobs you can, in some you can't. And second is what's the bigger purpose of the organization? Okay. People can look back and say, as an organization which sells beverages, what could be the purpose? I think we make life's moments better. That's how we say it. I think each one of us have a role to play to build that culture, to define that meaning for that individual so that the whole becomes measurable and what that real purpose is. And if that is compelling enough, I genuinely believe people will be motivated to come back into work. If that's not compelling enough, that's when they would tend to explore them. That's how I would put it. Young or old, it's the same view.
Perfect.
I just want to add
Sure.
point to that. So in the last 1 year, I have mentored about 300 of the youngsters in the name of internship, in the name of training pre-placement, from core engineering fields, from IT, from technology, management, supply chain. One of the things which I have discovered with the young generation is that you give them a hard problem and then allow them to go about it and make them get the conviction that the core of the life is very challenging, very interesting, and allow them to discover. They hook on to that and try to do some hard work in a conventional business. And if you talk in air and allow them to stay there, they make their choices which are very different, not sustainable. That's my take. Thank you.
Nobody should suffer fools gladly, so, and they shouldn't either. Niti, moving on from people, process, let's talk a little bit about the country. So to capitalize on India's growth decade, what do you think is the biggest internal or external bottleneck, and how are you clearing it from your industry perspective?
I think we've heard for far too long that in India, unemployability is a bigger problem than unemployment. And unemployment ratios are 4 to 5%. It's a ratio that surprises most people. Most people in India itself forget people from outside. We have 1.5 million STEM graduates passing out every single year. I think we have the volume, we have the talent pool with us. We can and we should aim to become the skills capital of the world. In a way, I think the world is looking at us for our talent pool. Are we doing enough to capitalize on it right now? I don't think we're doing enough. I think there's a lot to be done. Each one of us making investments, right from the school to the higher education to corporates. I think how are we hand-holding employees to become more employable, become more productive? He mentioned internship, apprenticeships. From our organization point, I think in the last 10 years, we've appointed apprentices under various schemes Government of India has. I think about 400,000 apprentices itself. Currently, we have 50,000 apprentice trainees across industries. So I think just creating an employability roadmap for each one is very important. And like he said, it's not just for freshers. It's even for people like us who are in the workforce and who want to continue being active and proactive. I think we'll have to keep upskilling and upgrading ourselves on the go.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's probably harder for us.
Yes.
Because learning is easier and learning is probably tougher. The next round of questions will focus on that area, and I want a really quick response in 30 to 40 seconds from each of you. I have different questions for each of you. The focus is how do we build old things? So how do we break old things while building new structures? In that context, Ganeshan, my first question is to you. What is the one standard corporate policy or buzzword you would like to take a sledgehammer to tomorrow?
So actually, the words are used differently in different organizations. They call it collaboration, alignment, democratically decide. But it's a misnomer, exactly the antonym of that happens. So I think I would like to break that and make it simpler and define it better.
Perfect. Praveen, what's the big...
Can I take a dig at that one?
Yes, yes.
You know, classically everyone around when they want to do some work, they are asked the question, do we have sufficient resources?
Yeah.
You never have sufficient resources. Do you have enough money ever?
Never.
Never.
So, almost there, but want a little more. So that's a, to me, sufficiency of resources is the biggest paradigm. You know.
Thanks. Praveen, my direct question to you is what is the biggest source of unnecessary noise that distracts your executive team?
No, attention. We are constantly looking at our phone. We are constantly looking at what's new. We are constantly looking at what could disrupt versus concentrating on what can be. I genuinely believe the best problem solvers are the best organizations or the teams which have been successful. I don't think are information rich. I think they are attention disciplined. That makes all the difference.
A friend of mine who works in the tech industry, and we're speaking about attention and why people are hooked to their phones. So we all put it down to FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So he said one possible way of dealing with FOMO is FOFO, fear of finding out. So if you can stay away from finding out, probably you won't have the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Niti, a related question, similar to what I asked you previously. What is the biggest bottleneck in achieving clarity in India right now?
I think alienating noise versus sound and the signals, right? I'll give you a classic example. For the last many quarters now, we are hearing about huge layoffs in the IT sector. Okay. If you're only reading the headline, everyone believes the IT industry is shrinking. It's actually the other way around. When you deep dive, when you understand what's happening, the amount of hiring requirements that are coming on cloud, security, governance, data, AI, on that side, and we don't have enough resources, like he mentioned. We don't have enough talented folks that we can hire. So I think just not reading headlines and trying to create a perception, and thereby, like he mentioned, attention, I would actually flip the other way and call it distraction. Because all this noise is too much distraction for us to focus and actually find our correct path.
True, thank you. Shailendra, what is the one practice from 2019 that is completely useless in your blueprint for 2026?
There could be many, and maybe this is not from 2019, but we got used to it during COVID. I think one term which has outlived, and I know I'm being provocative consciously, so work from home. Yeah, we all say that the environment is very dynamic. We need to be better aligned. We need to communicate more. We have to take people along. How do you do that in a 100% remote environment? To my mind, it's a difficult conundrum to solve. Yes, traffic is not where it should be. Hopefully, you raised it with our honorable chief minister when he was here this morning. Yeah, but a good blend is required. This permanent remote working, work from home is something we need to demolish quickly.
Yeah, so the honorable chief minister said he was keen to know the deliberations of Huddle. He's requested our curator Narayan to put together a list of suggestions from all participants of how to make Bangalore a greater city.
Can we
We'll
speak
certainly
offline,
add it.
please?
Make Whitefield part of
Your
Bangalore.
longer list now.
So we are towards the end of our conversation. I have the final round. Sir, I'll request you to ask the question to whoever you want offline. They will take a question from you once the session is done. So the final question is,
Let him.
Go.
So Praveen said we live in a VUCA world. I would like to believe we live in a BANI world. BANI being an acronym for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. I want a one-word response from each of you as a strategic response to how does leadership deal with a BANI word. Start with Ganesh. Ganesh, I want a one-word response starting with G.
So looking at strong India for the future, be a generator.
Generator.
Generate the capacity, resource, whatever you call it, generative
Perfect.
design, XYZ.
Niti?
Nimble.
Generate,
Be
nimble. Praveen?
Simplify. I'm just building on them.
No, I want
You
from
took
P.
away.
But I want to say that.
You took.
Generate, nimble.
Nimble.
But keep it simple, please.
Right, but a word with P.
Simple. Oh, you want
P, yeah.
He took away my word, by the way.
Coming to.
Oh, then I would prioritize.
Prioritize.
Yeah.
He said it already. Simplify.
So we have generate, nimble, prioritize,
Simplify.
simplify. That is GNPS, which is our panel's acronym for dealing with the BANI world. And I think we have done better than what a half-day workshop would do. GNPS is also the acronym for my panelists. GNPS represents Ganesh, Niti, Praveen, and Shailendra. Thank you for being lovely panelists. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.